leading clinic pharmacy. Oh, apologies. We are the leading clinic pharmacy and wholesale provider in Australia. And on the back of that success, we launched in April of this year with the clinic, and our partner pharmacy launched about 2 or 3 months ago. So, yeah, lots of interesting learning, and there'd be some really useful discussions. I think I do have some thoughts on the policing issue. Three of the patients who've been affected have been ours in the last couple of weeks. So yeah, we've very much been dealing with both the patient and also bashing our head against the wall with the police. So yeah, discussion on that would be really beneficial, I think, for me and for our patients.
Well said. I think there's a lot of will right now to get something organised between patients and the industry to kind of motivate the police to do something else. I actually saw a prominent industry solicitor earlier today make suggestion of a class action lawsuit suit that could potentially go out. Sarah, quickly, could you do me a favour, please, and mute Craig's iPhone? There's a lot of background noise coming through. Appreciate it. Yeah, okay, so moving on to Nick, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for having me. So I'm Nick Pateras. I'm the CEO of Lyphe Group. Lyphe is probably well known to most people on the call. So Lyphe has its own clinic, obviously, as well as pharmacy under the same corporate umbrella. I've been with the company for a few months now. I was brought in as the company was undertaking some changes earlier this year. My background is in more traditional medicines. So I started my career and spent many years in healthcare space, pharmaceutical medicines with Johnson & Johnson when I was living in Canada. So my scope was actually across the US and Canada, helping launch new products, helping educate doctors, open up new channels, and deciding on what new products to bring to market. It was after a few years that I became a bit disillusioned with that world and some of the practices. So I came across cannabis, medical cannabis, entirely by chance. I happened to attend a patient forum in Toronto and was really taken aback by the stories that patients told me about how medical cannabis allowed them to unlock quality of life that they had never experienced ever before. And so that really made me enthusiastic about the disruptive potential of medical cannabis. So I moved into the industry. Now I started looking at it in 2016, moved in it at the beginning of 2017. My first cannabis company was focused on collecting data around medical cannabis product efficacy and patient outcomes. And the mission was to arm doctors and patients with the information as to what products might be most effective for their conditions and how to build effective treatment programs. So helped build that company up from a very small startup. I was employee number 7 to a company that was 10 times larger by the time I left. Somewhere in the middle there, Justin Trudeau ran on the promise to legalize recreational cannabis in Canada as well, which was very exciting for many people. It changed the entire industry for better or worse. We all thought it was very exciting at the time. As it unfolded, it helped me realize that I cared more about the medical side of the industry than the recreational side. And so I chose to move back to Europe, which is where I grew up initially, and built a company that was focused on GMP processing and distribution. So we had a GMP site in Malta that we got licensed and started bringing in high quality cultivars from all over the world to introduce to the European market. And then we also acquired a German distributor. So we started selling to pharmacies up and down Germany as well. We sold that company earlier this year, and it was around that time that I was going to take a break, catch my breath, and the opportunity to come and help steer Lyphe into a different direction presented itself, and I thought that was an interesting opportunity. So as I said, I've been with the company for a few months, really motivated by what we're doing here and just the UK industry at large. So very grateful to be invited here and be able to speak to patients tonight.
Thanks, Nick. It's great to hear a lot about your background and where you come from. I was quite unaware of this myself. And just to point out to patients on the call, Nick's recently been speaking out for patients who need to grow their own medication. And I think that Lyphe Clinic is currently the only active medical clinic that's actually actively backing the right for patients to be able to grow their own. Well, while Nick was introducing himself, Pierre has joined the call. Many of you will be aware of Pierre already, who spoke on the last meeting, but I'll give him a chance to introduce himself again.
Thanks, Ralph. So yeah, Pierre from Weperen. I run the Pharma joint venture in the UK, and part of that is Integral clinics, for example. So hopefully around 7 o'clock, Dr. Sunny Nayi can still join if we're still going. He has some patients at this point in time, and yeah, that's me. Started in pharmaceutical and cannabis industry in 2019. 35 years pharmaceutical industry before that, and I'm really enjoying myself.
Glad to hear it. Okay, Sarah, do you have a list of questions you want to ask first before we make an open floor and take questions from people on the call?
Yeah, let me just go through and have a look. I just got pulled some off the Discord. So, okay. One of the first patient questions was stock levels on certain strains getting low should be brought to the attention of patients on the strain, so they have time to look for alternatives instead of waiting until due and then to be told we need a rewrite, leaving us either out of stock or having to use evening strains during the day, for example. And that was tying into the other one about is there going to be kind of online portals for patients with indications that something actually is in stock, just so people can, get the scripts wrote. I know we can go on MedBud, but with the stock and stuff like that, we're kind of guessing a lot of the time.
Fair remarks, Sarah. Does anyone want to address that directly?
Yeah, I'm more than happy to. It's unfortunately a little bit complicated. We've had this discussion with the MHRA, and I'm sure Ralph has had it. For us, and we thought about it, to build a portal. We have a list of ideas what we would like to do on a portal: strain finder, strain identifier, stuff like that, but also stock levels. The MHRA consider that promotion to the public for us, which makes it virtually impossible to do it. So we rely on the doctors knowing, and B, MedBud is probably the closest to the what we can do in this case.
To build on that question, Pierre, have you considered putting in some kind of identification or login to actually enable you to provide that information direct to patients?
Yeah, it's a very good point. So I used to do that when I was in pharmaceutical industry. So what we had, for example, so the law says if you are an actual patient and you can identify or prove as a patient, you can have access to, for example, things like product information, which could include stock levels. So what we did in pharmaceutical industry, if you scanned the barcode on the product that you had, that would give you access to the site. We thought about doing something like that. The problem with it, and it's again, people can share barcodes. People can copy paste barcodes on websites, and that's. I mean, I wouldn't have a problem with it, but the MHRA have a problem with it. So unless we completely nail it down with passwords, barcodes, identifiers, and everything else, it's just a very difficult thing to do.
And the problem there becomes, how do you verify who's accessing that information? Because yes, you have your own patients through Integral clinics, etc., but a lot of your patients are other clinics, right? You don't have the direct personal details other than what might come through a pharmacy.
Right. Yeah.
Nick, Asif, do either you want to address the question?
Yeah, so just to kind of reiterate what Pierre has said, so we wanted to do something slightly more basic, where we want to inform patients based on the information we get from IPS, from Special, and our own pharmacy, what's currently available and what has low levels of supply, just because we've had issues where you get caught up in what's called a prescription rewrite cycle. You write one item, goes out of stock. You write a second item, goes out of stock. You write a third item, goes out of stock. That's rarer than when we first started the clinic. But to put into context, we put like a small page on our website just to say, these are the items that we know that we've prescribed that have good stock levels. And we got contacted by the ASA, the Advertising Standards Agency, to take it down because that was considered prescription promotion. No pricing on there. It simply just said what the product is, which pharmacy kind of has good supply of them, and that was it. And even that was considered against ASA vis-a-vis MHRA rules. We are about to explore, from a system point of view, something similar where patients who order a prescription, we will be deploying our own kind of tech solution. We'll have the ability to see whether it's physically sitting in a pharmacy at our site. So we have this in Australia, and we want to deploy it for the UK, but that doesn't unfortunately solve the issue of informing the patient prior to a prescription being written as to whether that has a good supply level. So like Pierre, we rely on our clinicians and to kind of really keep them updated pretty much, once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week, to say these have good stock levels, these have low stock levels. And I've got to say credit to IPS. I think they've really, really helped us as a clinic in making sure that we are always informed when things are running low. Tilray being a really good example of it going out of stock all the time. But the issues we've faced in August, September have been markedly less than the issues we faced back in April and May.
Yeah, I'd like to reciprocate some of Asif's views there that low stock warnings have become a lot better over the past couple of months. It's something I almost shouldn't claim that I've been screaming out for a long time. All clinicians effectively need a 2-week kind of warning period before medications go out of stock, because there's often delays with post or whatever else that can delay a script getting to a pharmacy. Nick, do you have any comments on this at all?
I would just echo what was said previously. I think that the information about what stock levels are is something that we give access to our clinicians in real time. So before a clinician actually gets onto an appointment with a patient, he or she can check the real-time stock levels of any one product. And so therefore, what we're trying to mandate, we're re-engineering some of our processes to make sure this is more built into every single prescriber's habits, is that they bring that information with them to the appointment, so that there's never any misunderstanding about something being prescribed or the patient expecting that something's being prescribed and then only finding out 2 or 3 days later that it's out of stock. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we also send information about any stockouts to third-party clinics from our import partners. So we use a third-party importer that brings in our product and warehouses it in bulk for us. And then any third-party pharmacies who are calling on that product as part of their float or because they've received a prescription, they're notified ahead of time where there's a stock out. So I think there are systems in place to try to address this issue. I think that there's more to be done. And I think some of the ideas that Asif mentioned and Pierre mentioned are great as well. And we are also looking to improve on this topic too.
Hey, thank you. That's all quite reassuring from the industry panel in terms of better change happening going forward. Sarah, do we have a second question from the Discord?
Yeah, you just have to bear with me. I'm in the conservatory and my dogs just keep spotting something in the garden and going mad. So I keep muting myself. The second question we have is, with most clinics now taking on board a vertically aligned integrated system of operations, will clinics offer free consultation if patient numbers were to increase? And how many patients would be required for this to be made possible?
Oh, there's a loaded question. Who wants to take that one first?
Yeah, I can do it. I'll take the bullet now. And because Ish asked me exactly the same question a few weeks ago because of a comment I made at I think at a CMC meeting. I believe that once we get to 50, 60,000 patients in the UK, we will be able to run clinics a lot cheaper, if not for free. But that's just the way my calculations stock up.
It's worth noting on that the vertical integration is probably quite key to that, isn't it, Pierre? Because if that didn't exist, then there will be no way for clinics to fund themselves. Sorry, Asif, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, absolutely. So you just said what I was going to.
Well, does anyone want to build on that?
The only addition to me, I think, is I know there's a campaign in terms of GPs being allowed to prescribe. I think, let's be frank that specialist consultants are not cheap creatures. And they're not easy to find. We've struggled to get a neurologist, and that's 6 months after kind of launching. So, we're holding on to him with dear life. But I think once GP prescribing is allowed, be it in the NHS, be it in the private sector, I think that again will reduce the cost burden on clinics, which are significant at the moment. And without that vertical integration, I would argue the opposite, that actually the cost of care would be significantly more expensive. So I think that's worth bearing in mind. And most clinics are moving to a mixed clinical workforce model. We certainly are in using pharmacists. That allows us to keep costs lower, and I think that's a good thing from kind of keeping costs negligible. But hopefully once GP prescribing is allowed, that again should show that there is a little bit more space in terms of reducing the cost burden for patients.
Yeah,
Well said,
I do
Asif.
think, quickly to jump on, I define vertical integration. It's not all the way from we grow it, we import it, we wholesale it, we have the clinic, and we have the pharmacy. That's complete vertical integration. But if you look at Go Pharma, we do work with the clinics in terms of managing portfolios and all of that stuff. But that doesn't mean that you have to only prescribe your own brand or something like that. I mean, if you look at Monto, Alternaleaf, they have a whole range, just as much as Lyphe have a whole range and Integral have a whole range. So it's not vertical in terms of it needs to be my oil, it needs to be my flour, just to point that out.
Very much. The stringent regulations on patients being able to choose their own pharmacy, and clinics have to work within this workflow. And I think I can confidently say that no one here has caused any past controversy with patients for lack of prescribing products, or at the very least, there's nothing currently ongoing. Does anyone else have any further comments before I take the next question?
I would just say that I think it's hard to put our finger on a break-even number at which point all clinics could offer free appointments, because everyone has different fees right now, a different fee structure presently, as well as different cost bases. But it is clear, at least to me and those who I've spoken to in the industry, that is the end goal. The end goal is to offer free appointments to all patients. The current cost structure is quite high, as Asif just mentioned it. I mean, in the case of Lyphe, so we charge £49 for initial consultation. Our specialists range in their rates, but let's take an arbitrary number of £100. People don't often realize that actually the clinic is already subsidizing the cost of the appointment, just between the fee that we charge the patient for that versus the direct cost of the doctor's time. That's already a 50% subsidy on the doctor's rate that they charge the business. And that's not including any overhead or anything like that. So it does, vertical integration is a strategic idea that makes a lot of sense. But the idea is to hopefully get to a volume of patients that we don't have to charge anything, and the industry still makes sense by way of helping people into the legal system on its own. And that is, I think, what we all want to get to.
Well said, Sarah.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm just looking through. There's not loads of questions, just a few more. I am going through something at the moment with the DVLA, and it just led me to, like with patients that need proof, for like a letter for the DVLA or, proof of whatever that they're actually prescribed. I just feel like that the burden of proof shouldn't really be on the patient. It should be more on the clinics, because it's, I think I messaged Integral and they said it was about £10 to do me a letter, to prove that I was a legal patient. And I just think it's a lot, with tying into all the police problems and everything else. It's a lot of time it's falling onto the patients who are unwell as it is. And, I think that the clinic should be more more like forward about it, like in producing documents and things like that for us.
I will quickly note, not to be controversial here, but as far as I'm aware, Integral is the only clinic right now who does charge a fee for an identification letter. And based on having just said that, I'll throw this to Pierre immediately in case he has any comments on it.
No, the only question I would have, as far as I'm aware, you would only need identification letter if you travel abroad, isn't it?
I think Integro in general charge a £10 fee for any kind of identification letter, whether that's to be given to a foreign embassy or the DVLA.
Yeah, can't comment on that. That's what it is.
Well, I will state that obviously there is some costing incurred to the clinic in terms of having staff there to have the time to write a letter, etc. But I also acknowledge Sarah's point that, you know, for most clinics, they can't afford to pay anything more to their clinic, and they have monumental struggles with the DVLA, the police, etc. So, but a point for future thought, maybe. Sarah, do you have something else?
Yep. The next question is, we've got somebody asked if there would be any kinds of extracts or hash coming to the market as we're seeing them on the Australian market at the moment, medical market, and we're just seeing if there's any chance that we'll get them.
Sure. I'll make a quick note there. The hash that's available in the Australian market is bubble hash. There's a 55% and I believe a 60% product. I initially believed that these were GMP certified, and it turned out recently that they're not. Or more, I found out that they're not. And further to that, I understand that Australia is now requiring GMP certification for products to be bought in the country. So it's not even clear if these will continue to be available in Australia going forward. I don't know if anyone else has further comments on that.
I guess we have extracts in the form of cartridges, and I'd ask I have a follow-up question with regards to as they're the only form of concentrates that we have access to. I just wonder why there's such a significant increase in costs milligram for things like oil and cartridges as well. Although, sorry to kind of hijack the question there.
No, you're perfectly fine there, Sam. Yeah, it's a point worth bringing up. If you were to compare the exact milligrams in a tub of flour compared to an oil, you'd see that there's around 5 times initial starting cost per milligram. The only point I can make in defense of those costs is that with an oil, you are going to get a much higher rate of absorption, let's say, whereas with flour, you're going to lose a lot of your cannabinoids to the air through vaporization or combustion. So that is a minor consideration. Does anyone in the industry panel have any comments on the actual costs to extract oils and why that is higher?
As someone who ran a GMP processor with my last company, I can just emphasize that the costs for that extra step are gargantuan, far more than cultivating plants at scale. I'd have to rack my memories on the specific unit economics, but extraction does multiply your costs by a large factor, especially if you're doing more than just distillate. If you're refining the oil, running it through the extraction machine more than once, or even if you're doing more, I would say, premium high-grade extracts, live rosin or live resin, which as a little precursor are being explored to be brought into the UK marketplace as well. I don't want to commit to timelines, but I think it's something that we are pretty excited about the potential of. But that's why there's such a different cost base on a milligram basis is a significant increase in costs for the one extra step in processing.
As a follow-up question, do the current sales volumes play into the price dichotomy seen between flour and oil? At least from my own perception running MedBud, I see maybe a 5-6 times interest increase in flour as compared to oils and vape cartridges, etc.
So I can only speak from our perspective. From our perspective, it's more about like a percentage margin. And so the cost base upstream, we just get handed it, and then we have a target margin that we try to hit so that we can cover our overhead and employ people and pay doctors, etc. So as it comes to our own oils and our own vape cards, that's kind of where the math comes from. If we controlled the entire supply chain, I'd be able to better explore our upstream suppliers' costs and have a better answer for you there. But certainly the volume of flower, I mean, it's roughly 70% of the market right now. And so, you can afford for the medicine to be more affordable because it becomes more about volume rather than margin.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying there, Nick.
The other thing, if I may jump in, that Nick is absolutely right. I mean, I can show you some pictures of the extraction rooms that you have to build that basically cost millions to kit out. That stuff is ridiculously expensive. And then second part to it, and Nick pointed out, you can run it through once, but what you then get as an oil probably tastes like your garden and absolutely disgusting. So you want to filter it. You want to get it without any taste. Every filter process costs additional money. So that's part one. The other part, and that's slightly maybe a bit more philosophical, I'm not so sure if oils are the way forward anyway. Because putting drops under your tongue, keeping them there for God knows how long, we know how people go. You go one drop, or let's do another one, or whatever. The controllability or the exact dosing of oil is just not very good. So we're looking much more into things like asthma type inhalers or patches, for example, with controlled release, or even capsules with a clearly researched and established bioavailability. Those are much better in terms of dosing accuracy than an extract or an oil. So I'm just not sure if extracts actually are the future.
Yeah, fairly stated. And to build on Pierre's point there about how long you need to keep these sublingual oils under your tongue, with the saliva in your mouth, part of the THC is broken down into what's called delta 11 as opposed to, delta 9, similar to smoking, as opposed to delta 11, which is what's metastasized in your liver if you let it go through your natural digestive process. And delta 11 is the more psychoactive version of THC. A lot of unexperienced patients can find that quite anxiety inducing. So you do find there are a subset of patients who join medical cannabis or initially prescribed oil can have an initial off-putting experience because they've effectively overdosed on something, or they, for example, might not have waited enough time between trying another drop. They might not have left it under their tongue for long enough, etc.
I'd just like to jump in on that if I can, because I just wanted to ask a follow-up question to that, which is why are most of our oils, our legal oils, sapia-based? I know quite a few of them are White Widow, Cross, Amnesia, Haze, for example. Is there any reason why they chose those strains over like indicas? Because if someone like me I have a heart condition and anxiety was given the strong White Widow and Amnesia Haze oil, I would be climbing the walls and my heart rate would be through the roof, versus an indica oil, I would be a lot better. And I was just questioning that, really.
A fair comment. Worth noting that the products in question here are by Curaleaf, Vauxhall, Advent, etc. And there's no one on the call to kind of directly answer that. But does anyone have any comments?
Well, yeah, I think it was just because when I was speaking to Integro, they just, he said, I know the Aurora, I think I'm on the Aurora oil, the T25. That was one of the only ones that is indica based, and it's just a bit disappointing for someone like myself who requires, quite a heavy dose of oil at night. That I'm on 2 mils of the Aurora, and it's still not quite enough for me, coming from RSO. So that was why I asked it.
I don't believe at the moment with the Integro oil range or the Grow Pharma oil range, I should say that there's actually information on which cultivars the source material comes from. I don't think so. Maybe Pierre will correct me here.
Yeah, funniness, I asked, I do know it. I just need to dig in.
I think it's the LA it's the LA Confidential.
That's the Aurora. That's the Aurora one. That's LA Confidential, and the balanced one is LA Confidential and Canatonic.
Yeah,
I think the grow that we make ourselves is all Hellfire, as a strain. But there is something else I want to say to that. I mean, it depends on who you ask, but and Nick, because he ran the facility, will probably be better placed to reply that to us than that. If you run an oil or a flower through an extraction process, and what you're left with at the end is THC and CBD, and it's irrelevant what strain that comes from. What people put when you look at most oils, they are enriched with terpenes afterwards, not necessarily because the terpenes stayed in there. And that's again the extraction process and the filtration process. Almost everything evaporates in the process. So it's probably more interesting to look at, instead of strain specific generally means that it may be run by a strain, but the terpenes that belong to that strain have been added in afterwards.
Okay.
Fair
I think
comment to make.
it was just when I asked to be prescribed certain oils, I was just told no because it was Satvia. So I think it's just, an issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Sarah, are you asking about your preference for a specific strain in oil, a specific terpene profile?
Yeah, it was just because when I'm prescribed my oil, I always go for black market wise, it's RSO, so I suppose it's different than natural oil because it's more like full plant matter. But when I speak to I think we spoke to James at Integro, he was going through the oils, but he was looking which was indica and satvia as to guide, as to say, well, you probably shouldn't have that one because that's the satvia. But as him being a nurse, if he knew that, he could just say, well, it doesn't matter. You could just have any oil, to other patients. Because I know there's a lot of other people saying the same thing because they won't take the oil because it's a satvia and they're worried. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there is a range of oils out there today, and some do come from indica source material, but you're right, there is an awful lot of sativa oils on the market right now.
Surely it's true that depending on the strain, there's going to be I'd imagine as well as the THC and CBD content, there's going to be grossly different levels of minor cannabinoids, exactly your CBGs and CBNs and these things.
Yeah, this is true. I mean, we're talking about an isolate here, which is meant to isolate THC, CBD, etc. And as far as I understand it, because they are all fat soluble, you will still get other minor cannabinoids in an isolate. I don't know if Pierre has any further comments on that.
No, I was just saying what I'm going to look up what it was again on ours, but the point I made earlier, almost everything gets lost during the process. There is. I would really. If it depends a little bit who you talk to, but I've had some really hefty conversations. Ralph, you remember what's the lady from Columbia Care? Again.
Not someone I've spoken to myself.
I mean, if I asked her that question, she would give me the 20-minute lowdown why there is really no difference between sativa, indica, extracted oils. But again, it depends on what people. The oils that we get are probably 95% pure, between 90 and 95% pure. That's what we manufacture it from ourselves. But I don't know what other manufacturers do. So I can talk about the grow manufactured oils. They're 95% pure THC. So there is very little in there that would make any difference, but that's just for what we manufacture locally. I have no idea what others do. If it's less pure, there will be, if you take 85% oil or 85% distillate, which you can, and you can definitely make an oil from an extract from that, you will have other stuff in there. But I can't comment now because I don't know how much it is.
Okay,
I can chime in. So Pierre's right that in most forms of extraction used to supply the European market, it's mostly hydrocarbon extraction, almost always supercritical CO2, although there are a couple of facilities in Europe now that are licensed for ethanol extraction, which is pretty impressive because you basically have to build like a bomb bunker around the extraction room. and getting that licensed and approved under GMP is very, very hard. But in either case, both of those are hydrocarbon form of extraction, and what comes out the other end is almost never recognizable or identifiable as to the early initial raw material. So the strain profile basically disappears. Now, that's not necessarily the case, because you can use other forms of extraction. Like if you used a fresh frozen method after harvest, you could retain the terpene profile as it was initially harvested. But then you're not using a solvent. And GMP, it's not common in GMP yet to do solventless extraction, although I do hope that we get there as an industry. And again, something that we're working on ourselves. But on the point about indica sativa, I mean, yes, that kind of segues into another debate that we can have here if people are interested. I have a point of view on whether those terms actually have any therapeutic meaning, as opposed to just denoting the phenotypic expression of the plant. And so basically, all to say that I think that if your doctor is anchoring to saying sativa oil instead of an indica oil or vice versa, I think there's a conversation to be had about that doctor's understanding of what those two terms signify.
Fair remarks. I think Nurse James there, who was mentioned, is a specialist nurse and actually not a prescribing specialist himself. Sarah, do you have any further questions for me?
I think there's just two more to go. There's a lot of patients have messaged and said that they're worried about Royal Mail because we had an incident, I think it was a few weeks ago, where they gave someone's meds to the police because obviously it was cannabis inside, and I think he had a lot of problems actually getting it back. And a lot of people have said, why have we switched over to Royal Mail from couriers? And like, what happens? People are worried about Christmas, things like that, when it gets really busy, what happens then? I think people have said that, why have we gone to Royal Mail when we're all paying the same price, basically?
I can answer the obvious reason straight off the bat. It's price. Royal Mail is half the price of most dedicated couriers. I realise not all pharmacies are actually passing on this saving to patients since they started using Royal Mail. They are still charging the £9 to £12 fee, let's say, that we were seeing before. But some pharmacies are still using dedicated couriers. I think in the bids to be increasingly cost effective, we're seeing lots of people choose the cheapest courier right now, and maybe that isn't the best solution. Does anyone in the industry panel have any direct comments on that?
I can comment on that.
Go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, so I can comment on that because we made the switch from a different company to Royal Mail earlier this year. Ours was not based on cost savings, actually, because almost all of our patients, or a large majority of our patients, actually receive their medicine with free shipping. And so it's like 70% plus who are eligible for free shipping and then therefore don't pay. Maybe closer to 80% now, actually. So for us, it wasn't a cost consideration. Actually, it was the service. The previous company we were using was often dropping parcels off at the wrong address, was often having to return parcels, was often late or showing up outside of the delivery window. So we were just dissatisfied. Actually, when we moved from that other provider to Royal Mail, our complaints dropped by 80% just because of that switch at the pharmacy.
That's quite believable, Nick. I come from a logistics background, and I used to work with all the big couriers: UPS, DHL, DPD, Royal Mail, etc. And believe it or not, Royal Mail were by far the most reliable. We had something like a 99% success rate with them, and that dropped to about 96, I think, with our worst offender, which was DPD at the time. Asif.
I would echo that. So we had an incredibly disastrous foray with DPD for the month of July and August. It hammered our pharmacy feedback. So it's actually a combination of a lot of these specialist couriers, and again, we haven't delved into the reason why, delivering to Northern Ireland, the B word comes into play here, and the kind of remote areas, Royal Mail are by far the best. Similarly, we saw the return rate when we went back to Royal Mail drop to close to pretty much 1 or 2%. and that's because address issues or patients not being available after multiple delivery attempts. And yeah, our feedback and patient feedback via Royal Mail is significantly better, and we had a 6-week absolute disaster with DPD.
Fair remarks. It's worth noting most of these dedicated couriers have surcharges for both Northern Ireland and the Highlands. You might be talking here of an £8 to £10 fee, going up to say £25. It can be extremely expensive on the pharmacy side as well.
Yeah.
And as Asif just said, in remote regions you don't get good coverage from the major couriers anyway.
No.
Sarah, do we have a last question from the group?
So I quickly jump in.
Yeah.
This is all exactly the same for us. Royal Mail is just a lot better. I also have the answer for you on what our grow oils are coming from. It's Heruana that's used for the extraction.
Heruana, so they are all from indica source material then?
Correct, yeah.
What about the CBD side of things? Because obviously there's some which are combined between a CBD and a THC cultivar, right?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I have no idea. I need to check that.
I thought I'd stump you there.
Yeah,
No
thanks.
worries.
Can I just jump in on the postal thing? Because I'm actually a postman, and the parcels that are sent are from. I'm with Lyphe, at least, so they are. We don't know what's in them as a postie. Obviously, I do because I get one. But there shouldn't be anything identifiable about it, as long as it doesn't smell. As long as they're posted special delivery, Royal Mail's is very good because we're told to prioritise them above everything else. Even though they say publicly we don't.
Special deliveries, they're before 1 p.m. service, isn't it?
It is the before 1 p.m. service, but the key thing with special delivery is it will get taken, even if the walk doesn't go out that day because the postie's sick or we just don't have enough staff or whatever. Special deliveries will always be completed. Track 24s won't necessarily, but they are prioritised above non-tracked.
Great feedback there, Andy. Thank you. I do want to pull you up on one point there. I had a Royal Mail delivery over the weekend from a Medica dispensary, and by God, my postie certainly knew what was in the package because I had to have a 20-minute conversation on legal cannabis. Was quite happy to have it, but patients do get identified, unfortunately, from their postie time to time. Okay, Sarah, do we have a last question from the group before we open up to people here?
Last question was, somebody said, I think it would be useful for patients to view facilities where the medicines are grown. Is that something that could be done at all, even through YouTube? As I understand, some American companies have done some similar tour style videos for patients.
That is a very good question. Someone sitting on this call called Drew, and I don't know if it's Drew Gilchrist or not, but he recently went out to see Sinceritas's facilities out in North Macedonia. I know Pierre here recently took some doctors across from the UK out to Gro's facility in North Macedonia. And I've actually been invited myself down to South Africa next month to see a facility. Yeah, I've been pushing a lot of people to kind of make this public information. Mikhail was sitting on the call here from Medcan down in South Africa. I've queried him on the past on kind of opening patients up to some of their procedures as well. I'll actually feedback one of his points here, hopefully him not minding. In South Africa, there's a security concern surrounding cannabis facilities too. So there's a lot that they need to do on their side to make sure that as a result of publishing more information from patients, they don't have local issues as well. Nick, Asif, Pierre, is there any other comments there?
Just that I think it's a great idea. I was actually at one of our preferred suppliers facilities recently and was sharing some photos on Twitter of a new cultivar that we're planning on bringing to the market soon. But I think the idea of tours, whether virtual or in person, is great, and something we're working on at the moment too.
That's great to hear. I also just remembered that Hilltop Leaf up in Scotland are quite happy to have some people around. Asif's nodding there. I just remembered, I think Asif's gone up and seen the facility himself.
I'm here right now.
Oh, are you? Okay, well, there we go then. Of course, the Montu Pharmacy UK is on site next to what will in the future be Hilltop Leaf's cultivation facility up in Scotland. So that's something hugely exciting for many patients, I'm quite sure.
There is a and I hate to be the party pooper, but there is again a promotion to the public issue with it, just as much as we are not allowed to advertise as a producer to the public about the products. Taking people to a facility could very easily be seen as doing exactly that. So there must be ways to do it, and we've been working on whether we should do YouTube videos or tours. There is obviously, between the facilities, there are some things that they don't want to show because it's different between what they do and what others do. So there's a bit of what you are allowed to see, and some of the rooms, like growing rooms or extraction rooms or packing rooms, you just can't go in, because as soon as you go in, you take all the microbes and everything else into the room, and it gets contaminated. So there are a lot of restrictions where we can do videos through a little window that you can look into the room. But I mean, I'm always surprised. We went to a facility in Portugal on Thursday. It's massive to do stuff, and I think that's that as an idea to maybe do something about what does it mean to be a GMP approved facility. How many different rooms do you need to have? How many changing rooms do you need to have? What stuff do you need to wear? It's like going into a spaceship where you walk through one door, then you're in a zone, then the first door needs to close before you can actually open the second door to go in. Everything needs to be absolutely spick and span from the floor wise. It would be a good idea to maybe show some of that stuff, what it actually means. And then a growing room looks like a growing room. You see plants growing, and whether it's a greenhouse or indoor, that might be different, but you don't really see any different things. We can discuss whether you grow in soil or you grow in rock wool and all of the other things. But just an idea about what it means to have a facility to get approved to actually do this would be probably something we could do a lot easier than going the whole tour.
Yeah, fair remarks. It's worth noting as well, there is an immense kind of upfront cost to actually get a certified facility. You're talking about multi-million-pound investment, and having to build facilities before you actually get the kind of government approval, at least this is the case for cultivating in the UK, the Home Office approval, that you can actually start dispensing product from this facility. And then, of course, it needs to meet European cannabis monographs, go through checks with the MHRA, etc. And patients entirely seem to misunderstand this process at the moment, and all the kind of stringent tests which happen behind the scenes before pots end up in their hands. And yeah, it's something that I think a lot of patients would like to see greater transparency on, just so they can understand the process better.
I think that's a great point. And actually, I think that industry would do well to educate patients on just what GMP actually means. It's a term that gets branded about without there being a full understanding. With my former company, what we did was we transformed what used to be an auto and boat repair shop that used to fix, it was literally a mechanics shop, and we completely gutted it and turned it into a narcotics processing facility. And GMP is a philosophy, I came to learn. It's not just about documenting batch records or making sure that personnel are trained every few months. It is a philosophy that goes down to the detail of how porous is the paint used on the walls? Do the airlock systems work every single second of the day, such that you know that the humidity levels in the room, the airflow of the room, all of that is constantly monitored. So one of the main investments when you launch a GMP facility is actually the EMS, the environmental monitoring system. Every single variable is monitored. And it is pharmaceutical grade. That's why an EU GMP is the gold standard, because GMPs are standards set by different countries, but in Europe, it is the highest of anywhere in the world. And so it is down to that level of detail. And so I think people should recognize that is the standard that we're making medicine. Now, some might argue that it's overregulated, but it's the standard by which medicines that are being sold to patients in this country are actually made.
Yeah, well said indeed. Okay, so as we're going to open this up into the floor, thank you, Ish. I was about to say, if anyone wants to raise their hand, please do, and I'll take questions in the order that hands pop up. So yeah, starting with Mohammed at Sanskara.
Yeah, thank you, Ralph. So my question, I think, kind of goes back to something that we touched on earlier at the beginning of this meeting, and it's about patients being arrested, medications being seized, and with the numbers of patients increasing, we've also seeing a number of patients being arrested, like more numbers being arrested and having their medication seized. We've recently seen a patient having their door knocked in and unfortunately suffering a lot of grief from the police. So what are clinics doing to effectively change this or to improve this for patient welfare and safety? I mean, we know that clinics can provide support once the issue has occurred, but what can we do to stop this from occurring in the future? Thank you.
Yeah, great question there, Ish. It's the prominent issue facing patients today. Who wants to take that first?
Happy to kind of give you our input. So I think based on our experience, and of course it's going to be multiplied, across the industry, it's twofold. One is no one clinic has the size, the scope, I think, or the headspace to contact every single police force. We've done it with 4 in the last 2 weeks, and each one of them has, required an exorbitant amount of time, and there isn't really a, hey, can you speak to the chief constable? We even, went as far as to try and speak to the crime and police commissioner for the area, who just weren't interested. So I think, we have an idea as to what we want to do, and that does involve a bit of press, a bit of PR, a bit of outreach to all the police forces, but I think it needs to be standardized. And I hope that, with Nick, Pierre, and maybe others in the future, we can come together and actually do something, because if it benefits one clinic, it will benefit all clinics. But I don't think no one clinic has the bandwidth to kind of go out and speak to every single police force. There is another element to it for us, and I think this is something that we are starting to think about in terms of how we communicate to patients. I think we have to be transparent to patients to say that there is still a lot of misinformation. We don't want to scare patients away, but I think we need to be truthful to our patients to say, look, this can occur and these are the things we can do. So we're looking at some of our comms, especially people who've never tried medical cannabis, so that we tell them, what the landscape is, but also I think reminding them the correct use, to making sure that, they don't take all of the medication with them when they leave the house, that they do retain it in their packaging. We send electronic prescriptions just so they have their kind of in their email addresses. Those sorts of things won't necessarily solve the issue, but hopefully they will be cumulative. But that, in terms of patient comms, is one thing we can do in real time. So we're starting to do that. But I think as an industry, we do need to come together and possibly pool our collective resources in trying to speak to the police forces en masse.
Yeah, well said. And just to rephrase Ish's question a little bit based on Asif's answer there, would all of the individuals on the call today support a collaborative industry-led effort to actually re-educate the police?
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
100%.
Okay. Well, I won't make any further comments on that.
Just to add to your point there, Ralph, I think one of the best places to actually start this communication is with the College of Policing, because they're actually the facility that actually train police officers across the UK, and would like to start this dialogue with them, with your help from the clinics.
Can I jump in there as well? Because I was arrested on August the 17th. I approached the police for help. I had my medication in the tubs. I had my prescription on my phone. They didn't even look at my prescription. They told me it wasn't possible to have flour. So they confiscated it off me, put me in the back of a police van, handcuffs and everything. I asked for a sergeant who de-arrested me at the scene, but it took nearly 3.5 weeks to get my medicine back, despite, as the other guy was saying, contacting the police and crime commissioner and everyone. There was just no acknowledgement that they'd taken.
You've cut out there, Andy. Hopefully we'll get Andy back in a second, but as he said earlier in the call, he's actually a postman, and to hear a postman getting arrested for their private prescription seems like something else. Oh, there we go, Andy's back.
Oh,
so
sorry,
you cut out there for the last, let's say, 10 seconds of what you were saying.
Yeah, I was just saying, like, we definitely do thing to show the police, because I had everything on me for them to follow the Home Office guidance, but they just didn't do it. You know, they just said, well, it's just suspicious. Not quite sure why, but, and as I said, particularly getting it back, there needs to be new policies and procedures for the police to actually, you know, if they confiscate someone's medicine, they should the next day be ascertaining whether or not they should give it back, not 3.5 weeks later.
100%.
Yeah,
that seems like a very, very valid point, Andy. And I'm pretty sure this thread of the conversation we picked up after the call today. Moving on to Kieran's question, which might be related.
Yeah, I'm going to sound a bit like a broken record, but I think it's worth asking again, because myself and many other patients have quite a lot of anxiety, and it seems it's left on patients to play catch up. So my question was, what have you done to disassociate from CanCard, and more broadly, what are you doing now to proactively prevent patients from repeatedly being put in jeopardy with the police and not just responding reactively?
Oh, there's a loaded question. Would anyone like to publicly disassociate themselves with CanCard on this call?
Yes.
Okay. Well,
I'm
thank you for being
more-
so blunt, as if I wasn't
More
expecting
than-
anyone to take me up on that.
More than happy to join that. Yes.
We don't have an official relationship with CanCard. I do think that the point about the general theme here from this question and the previous is something that we as clinics obviously need to address. Patients who have legal prescriptions shouldn't be at risk of arrest, period. So what are we doing to make sure that that doesn't happen, or that in the event that an uneducated police officer is causing trouble, how can we be there for the patient in that moment? I think it's something that we need to think about. I don't know if it's like a 24-hour hotline, someone can validate the prescription is legal, or something like that. Maybe it's a collective database. I'm not sure, but if this is a legal prescription, it is shocking and should be considered appalling that patients who've chosen to get legal access are at risk of still being criminalized and still even being detained and having their prescription confiscated. I mean, even if someone's detained temporarily and had their prescription confiscated for a short period of time, that's still flatly unacceptable.
We should be in this situation where if a patient is incarcerated, they still need to be provided access to their medication. They still need to be able to use their medication as directed by their prescribing specialist. We've got a long way to go on medical cannabis. Thinking out loud here, I've often wondered what happens if someone ends up in prison, if they're sentenced in prison and they have a private prescription right now. Could that even be maintained in prison? You know, is there a human rights aspect to this? Anyway, as I say, I'm spitballing out loud here. Kieran, to come back to you.
Yeah, so just to point out, I mean, it's very recent, but somebody's just posted again a Freedom of Information request from the PSNI, and they're directly saying that one of their ways of identifying a patient's legitimate prescription is CanCard and then MedCan ID, which is, you know, no longer in existence. So again, my question is, what are you proactively doing to prevent this kind of misinformation and this kind of, you know, confusion to officers and patients?
It's a very direct question. Does anyone here have any proactive solutions? A way to answer Kieran and many other patients' concerns here without just being reactively reacting to each individual patient controversy which comes up. Asif.
I can only speak for Alternaleaf, and I think just acknowledging that we have been reactive. We've been caught just by, I think, the number and the frequency with which this is happening, which has been very alarming for us. So this is sort of kind of priority number 1 and 2 internally as to what we can do. So we've got a plan in terms of sending out comms to all of the police forces. We've done it with 4, and it's taken 2 weeks for us to get through to 4. But it's not quick enough, and I don't have confidence, having spoken now to those 4 forces, that information is filtering down to the local police stations, the local constables, etc. So my anxiety is that we as a clinic aren't moving quickly enough for our patients. So I think it needs to be done something probably cross collaboratively, but also that you can speak to one person, and I think we've all been there, that they will say yes, great, all tickety-boo, and then I don't come out of those conversations feeling confident that information is going to get translated to the local police force. So I don't have the answer here and now, other than it's sort of like we are just literally working through every police force. But I think this is something as an industry that we need to rapidly come together on and do something very proactively and very publicly.
How about the
Well stated.
APPG?
Yes, so we've got an all-party parliamentary group currently on medical cannabis. Could they get involved in this discussion? Earlier today, I actually tagged them in a tweet, calling mentioning a previous report that was put together by an MP who had put suggestions forward on a verification method for patients, which was a centralized database. They explained that this database already existed and was used for NHS medical cannabis prescriptions. So there was some theorizing going on there as to whether this could actually come into place and be used as a means to identify yourself with the police without having to give specific medical information. One of the largest problems we have at the moment with the police is that technically they can't even ask you for a prescription copy. They cannot compel you to supply private medical information whatsoever. Yet that's one of only 2 pieces of information we have to validate ourselves with the police. Many police seem to be mistrusting of the pharmacy dispensing labels affixed to tubs, even though it's mandated. The Department for Health and Social Care has come forward on a response to Sanskara platform who's sitting on this call, that label alone should be sufficient lawful proof. It's not right now. And I don't want to argue for patients having to give away their private medical prescription information. So what else could we have? And then the other point I'd like to make quickly, as Asif said, is I think there does need to be a collaborative industry effort on this. I think that potentially it could go via the Cannabis Industry Council. And my only final comment here is that a petition should hopefully be going out later this week, another government petition asking for the Home Office to issue new national guidance for police forces to make sure it's circulated to all police forces and that they revise current policy, protocols, guidance, etc. based on that. It's waiting for approval right now with the House of Commons petition team, but when that goes out, hopefully later this week, Drew is sharing and some others are going to be promoting it heavily, hoping to get 10,000 signatures in the first couple of weeks to force the fastest possible response from the government. Because, of course, when we get to 10,000 signatures, we must get a government response, and that normally follows within just a week or 2. Chris, you've had your hand up for a while now. Sorry to rabbit on.
No problem. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your time tonight. It was just generally from an industry point of view, what direction should we as patients, as a group, or as individuals try to focus our actions on going forward? So obviously we're aware of like Brexit, the regulatory framework, the political framework. What do you see from your time in industry, not just in cannabis-based medicines, but in general, a good direction for us to be focused on?
So how can patients support the growing industry, Chris?
More their opinion on what our direction should be. Obviously, we meet as a group and bring up our issues and experiences, but I don't want to be ignorant of people's professional experience and opinions. Just sort of like thoughts on the
where's the industry going to go next?
On where we should, as patients, direct ourselves in a way. Obviously, it's good that we're patient-led and we're meeting, but where in their opinions do they think we could improve, or
you mean as the MCPA?
That kind of thing. Sorry?
Did you mean how should the MCPA improve?
Yes, yeah, like just like an avenue that we should go towards, or even as individuals, or what would you like to see from patients that you're not seeing, sort of thing?
Okay, yeah. Do we have any answers from the panel?
Yeah, I think the thing that comes to mind first, and I think we touched on it a little bit tonight, there is still a really big gap between, let's call it patients very much in general understanding on why medical cannabis is what kind of medical cannabis is, how it's grown, all the things that we have to jump through as cultivators, all the things that clinics need to jump through to comply with the rules, and that's one part. And you know, I mean, it's you look on most social media, that's part of the problem. Most social media are very negative and picking out a lot of the criticisms around it, whilst at the same time there's very little room for dialogue. So I'm very pleased about this, because it actually gives us an opportunity to have a conversation about things, versus if you sit on the receiving end of what comes out through Reddit or somebody other, you get the tears in your eyes about what you're trying to do, what comes back with. So increasing that understanding is one, and the second bit, generally massively important, is anything that we can do together to increase awareness of the fact that medical cannabis is available on prescription and is legal, because that, I think, is still the biggest issue. Most people just don't know, and if they know, they think it's silly expensive, or it's incredibly difficult to get it, or it's rubbish quality. So there's a lot of stuff that we can do there in improving the general acceptance.
I think that's fair remarks. Asif, Nick, do you have any comments?
I would just echo that the best way for us to kind of build this movement together is just by continuing to be engaged. So, and delivering feedback to the companies like this. Forums like this are really helpful to us. I've had a lot of patients message me directly. I always respond. I also make it practice to get on the phone regularly with our patients to speak to them about an issue they might be having, or solicit feedback. I think that what we have to understand is it is a case of trying to build what we envision medical cannabis to be all together. And if we work together, if we collaborate, that means giving feedback to us both when things are going well and when things are expected to be better. I mean, I come on this call under no illusions about, you know, previous criticism of the company that I'm representing tonight, and that's fine and fair. And I think that there is a standard of service that should always be expected of private healthcare, and that should be delivered in a hard but fair fashion. And I think that the idea is that we're all actually trying to work together for what we envision medical cannabis to be. We're committed to that. I know Asif and Pierre are committed to that as well. So just keeping engaged, keep giving us feedback, and we will improve. I mean, I do think that if people are in the medical cannabis system now and had been 2 or 3 years ago, it's pretty clear there's been major improvements. It's only going to continue. But also recognize that progress isn't linear. It's not like every day is better than the previous. It's a general upward zigzag where there are some setbacks, but when you take a step back, things get better over a prolonged period of time. We will get there.
Well said. Okay, so we're just over the hour mark. I think I'm going to throw it to everyone for some final questions. Nick did mention by chat a minute ago he has to leave very shortly. I do also notice we've got Dr. Sunny sitting here from Integro that Pierre mentioned may join us after we finish with patients tonight. Are you with us, Dr. Sunny?
Yeah, if there's no other questions for myself, guys, unfortunately, I do have to excuse myself. So if there's another question, I'm happy to answer it. But otherwise, I'll bid everyone a great evening.
Okay, well, going once, going twice. Any final questions for Nick? Okay, well, thank you for your time today, Nick. Appreciated your answers to questions, and we'll catch you in a future patient industry meeting, I'm quite sure.
Thanks, everyone. Ciao, ciao.
Thanks, Nick.
Thank you, Nick.
Cheers. Okay, do we have any further questions from anyone else here? Okie doke. Chris.
Yeah, it was just about a lot of producers, some provide patient information, COAs. What do you see as a barrier for all producers or importers providing that information to patients, kind of thing?
I'll take that before I pass it across. clinics and pharmacies advertising to patients largely comes under what's called the MHRA Blue Guide. It's a big document which explains what information you can give out and to who you can give it out to. For example, it makes specific allowances to share data with healthcare professionals, for example. This is something that MedBud's been debating with the MHR directly for several months, trying to figure out where we stand on the information we provide. And while I'm not going to go into full details on this call, we've got to make some changes ourselves. So I personally sympathize with the industry here because despite MedBud's own caution, we've run into problems with the MHRA. And I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Pierre, Asif, is any comments on that?
Yeah, it depends a little bit on what you're looking for. I mean, for your doctor, your doctor can share with you information about the product, but we can't, as Ralph was saying, we can't share it with you. That's that promotion stuff. But if you're interested in terpene profiles and all of these things, all of that stuff is on our doctor portal and available for prescribers. So if you're interested in that, apart from that, I think, yeah, there was a lot of MedBud, but they need to make some changes. But I would also say if you Google a little bit into, I mean, we're going to do Frosted Lemon Angel in November. If you Google Frosted Lemon Angel, you probably get quite a lot of information about terpene profiles, heritage, and all that stuff. Probably all that we can give you too. So if you, is there anything, are there other things that you miss that you would like to know that we are not currently not providing? Then we can look at it when we can.
There was a point raised in the last industry meeting actually to provide COAs directly to patients, and I believe Claire from IPS took that question.
Yeah, that's a direct violation of promotional. You can use your license for doing that.
Well, that makes it quite clear then, doesn't it?
Sorry, yeah, it's extremely black and white, but
sorry, yeah. Is that even after purchase?
After what? Sorry, Chris.
After purchase.
Yes.
So like with
that's what Pierre, can COAs be shared with patients after purchase when it can't be considered promotional?
No.
Oh,
well, I mean, yes, the answer, but how do you see
verify that something's already been purchased if you make the information available? Yeah.
Where things go
if it comes from the pharmacy, maybe with your medicine.
Where things go wrong is, and I mean, I know it's, I don't want to come across as negative in there because I would like to, but where things go wrong is that from an MHRA perspective, if we give it to one and it then gets out somewhere out in the open, the MHRA are going to say to us, well, we shouldn't have given it to one to start with. So you're regardless of whether we then actually cause the issue, we're still being blamed for being at the origin of the issue, and that's what makes it so difficult. There is, unless you, I mean, even our doctor portal, you need logins. We check whether people are doctors, healthcare professionals. It's a pretty, we can kind of close it all down to make it super secure. But if we do that, you probably have to jump through 7 hoops before you get in, and I'm pretty sure you'll get an email that you forgot your password every time to log in to it. So it's a very black and white thing. Everything that we do that has a risk of getting into the public without us making sure that it doesn't can be considered as a promotion to the public. I'm not sure if you remember, was it when we launched our grow range? I may have mentioned that example. When we launched our grow range, which was non-irradiated, there was some rah-rah about certain people saying that they were not going to prescribe non-irradiated flower because it wasn't safe. We posted a comment, and Mike Barnes supported it on internet, basically saying there shouldn't be an issue. Yes, if you're immunocompromised, don't use non-irradiated flower, but that's it. And we got done by the MHRA within 5 minutes on the phone. Take it down. And that's just that's the level of regulation that you need to work with.
To back up Pierre's point there, the the UK Medical Cannabis Clinicians Society came out in support of Grow at the time, and the comments made by Grow Online were trying to publicly clarify some of the controversy. They would be very hard to mistake as promotional, yet the MHRA considered it as such. So yeah. Kieran, you've got your hands up.
There we go. I should have probably asked this when Nick was here, but some appreciation to Lyphe Group and Dispensary Green for partnering with Vida. What do you think is stopping other clinics or pharmacies from doing something similar?
It's a good question. We discussed this in the last call partially as well, where there was some kind of regulatory concerns brought up about including them in patient pots, but Lyphe Group here have chosen to include Bovedas externally, separate to patient pots. And I guess Kieran's question is, now they're doing it, why can't anyone else?
We've stolen Lyphe's idea, and we're going to start next week.
So excuse my unprofessional laughter here. Pierre, do you have any comments?
No, I would like to think that we don't need it, but sometimes you do.
Kieran's currently biting his lip if you look closer.
Yeah, I know. I know I put my foot in that one, but it's a difficult thing for me. So from a pharmacy perspective, you can probably include it in the packaging that you generally do with the prescription. But I just don't see, but that's where my pharmacist is talking in my ear. What, how, when, how long, where, when do you need to put it in, when do you need to take it out? There is just not enough clear guidance on that, which makes my pharmacist a bit nervous.
Have you been given any reassurances, Asif, about that issue?
So obviously every business is going to have its own risk profile. And for us, it's a good idea that we saw online and we thought, hey, why not? Given we give out pipettes for oils, which goes inside the patient's mouth. And, yes, these are sterile, but we don't give any specific guidance to say you must store the pipette in this way, you must wash it daily. That general information is given during a consultation. So for us, we don't see this as a risk. It's a neat idea. Let's try it. And if it works, great. There is nothing regulatory wise preventing us from doing it. Of course, it can't go in the pots because pots are all sealed. So for us, it was simply it's a nice thing to do, therefore we're doing it.
I guess when it's included in the packaging, it comes under the patient's discretion whether or not to use it. I think it's similar to the sort of vape issue where it's like there's licensed ones and there's ones that are just not licensed, but there's no issue with you using an unlicensed one. It's just your discretion which you use.
Yeah, effectively. I think the only difference I've ever seen between the certified vapes and the non-certified vapes is when used in a hospital context. For some hospitals' insurance purposes, apparently they only want medically approved vapes, but then I've heard of many other patients who've been in hospital without medically approved vapes which haven't had an issue. So, yeah. Okay, is there any further questions from the group? Or are we about ready to wrap things up for tonight? Okie doke. So I believe that this is going to stay a regular feature within the MCPA going forward. There's going to be a rotating group of industry guests. Sarah, do you have any further comments?
Yeah, sorry, I was just trying to be quiet for a while then so everyone could get a word in edgeway. Yeah, we do hope to have these meetings. I think it was the first Monday of every month. I will figure out who is coming to the next one, who wants to come. If people are interested, let me know. So I think it will be, what's the date today? Just looking at the next, it would be the next
6th
Monday.
of November?
Yeah, 6th of November. So yeah, if anyone wants to get in touch with me, and we can get that arranged. But I'll keep everyone updated via the website and by the Discord group as well if people are in there. And also I'll post on Reddit as well. But I think it's been a really, really interesting meeting. Like just these kinds of meetings, like I was saying before, that they just fill in the gaps for us as patients, because a lot of the time we're filling in the gaps with the wrong, the wrong stuff, and we putting two and two together and making five. And I think as we all can speak to each other and create a dialogue and learn more about everything, it's getting a lot better. As I was saying, I posted on Instagram, and I've been a patient now for, I think, 3 years or so. And it's only recently, the past year, where I've seen such a massive increase, in everything seems to improving massively, really snowballing quickly. And like the quality of the flower and everything else, how quick my appointments are, we are getting there. I really do think we're getting there. It's just the final push to sort out the little niggly things.
Yeah, well said, Sarah, and I'll echo those comments as well. I've been a patient for nearly 2 years now, and in just that space of time, it's always been a revolutionary change within the industry. I struggled through my first few months with a prescription to even have my prescription dispensed reliably. Today, that's the last of my concerns. And in fact, even stock levels have got a lot better. I mean, we're still suffering from the issue that a lot of popular flowers are a victim of their own success, as in they go out of stock too quickly. And we're also suffering growing pains. That is, as medical cannabis becomes more popular, there's a growing demand on stock. But to import more stock, you need to evidence a higher level of clinical need. So you're always kind of working in arrears on that medical need that you can evidence, while having to supply stock from the previous clinical need in the meantime. So to some degree, we're always playing catch up with the amount of stock that can be in the country. But again, compared to 2 years ago, it seems to be far better today. I'm going to make a final call for questions now. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay. With that, I'd like to thank Asif Dewan, Pierre van Weperen, and also Nick Pateras, who's already jumped off this call. Appreciate all the comments tonight. As Sarah said, it's great to create a dialogue with the industry, and we hope this will continue. The next meeting will be on the 6th of November, and if you want to get in contact with Sarah directly, use contact@mcpa.uk, and that is .uk, not .co.uk. All right, thanks all for attending, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Bye. Bye.
Cheers, guys.
Bye bye.